Thank you, Iwona. Nice to see you again. I hope you had a great time at the conference. Yeah, I think that I'm gonna give the floor to you very fast to tell us about the e-wing, which I guess, like, for everyone, I guess everyone knows already about it. It's the 28 regime that's gonna I don't know, foster innovation and help startups scale faster. Tell us a bit about, like, yourself, your involvement with the initiative, and it would be great actually to walk us through the whole process as much as possible. How did you come up with this idea? How did you manage to mobilize all these forces, and which are the core elements of the initiative?
Thank you, Nicoleta. Hi, everyone. I'm part of the e-wing team. I actually led the legal efforts for the legislative proposal that we have introduced to European Commission. I promised my team that I will wear this cap, but I think I'm going to take it off now. So to tell you a little bit about what e-wing is, for those of you who do not know this initiative, it's a grassroots movement by pretty much the whole of the startup and venture capital ecosystem. We've created a huge momentum last year, have about 18,000 people have signed a petition that calls for a pan-European legal entity, which is essentially has centralized EU registry. It's a European company from day one. It's digital first. You can incorporate 24 hours. You can raise money on standardized documents, issue ESOP to employees, which is also standardized at the pan-European level. The idea has been going around for a long time. So startup associations have actually been calling for this for, I would say, 5+ years. But we, as ecosystem, have created this huge momentum last year. We've had, in 2 months, 15,000 who signed the petition, which clearly speaks for the amount of pain that founders have to go through in order to raise across Europe. And what it's tackling, it's not only like the systematic issues, but also it's looking into unlocking continental scale. So it's easier to raise money. For example, it doesn't matter where you're based in Europe, whether it's Poland, Greece, French, you will raise on the same terms. It will be so much easier for you to set up a company and sort of have that almost global mindset from day one. It resonated so much because everyone, I don't know, I'm a legal operator, so I've worked with founders across globally, in fact, and Europe. So I've seen how much more difficult it is to start a company and to scale across Europe versus, for example, the US. And a lot of investors also still require people to incorporate in the US or UK. Recently, I actually had a story where we had this amazing Greek founder and kind of wanted to stay in Greece, but because the investor didn't really know the jurisdiction, they have asked him to incorporate in the US. Even though he's staying in Greece, he will be operating a company in the US. So if we have an e-wing, you can become a Greek e-wing from day one. You can stay in Greece, operate, but you are centrally registered with an EU register. In terms of where we are right now, maybe a quick update. So actually this whole petition started with a frustration on a LinkedIn and people, like some people just ranting about how difficult it is to scale in Europe, to raise in, like we have 27 different markets, 27 different types of legal documents. And essentially this kind of solution is meant to just help this fragmented ecosystem to be more unified. It's almost like fixing Europe for startups. And where we are right now is we've submitted a legislative proposal, so we've had the whole ecosystem, venture capital firms, startups, founders, legal experts who have written this legislative proposal about 6 months ago. We submitted it to the European Commission. In fact, we've been working with them very closely for almost 6 months on a weekly basis, trying to explain to them what the ecosystem actually needs to thrive, to unlock this capital flow across Europe, but also to have that legal structure available to anyone in Europe in any country.
That's amazing, and I think the consultation process just closed yesterday.
Yes, we run a very successful CAP campaign. So, as you know, the European Commission and Brussels love surveys. So they created this very complicated public consultation paper. So they have asked about hundreds of questions. It was over-intellectualized, and I've had some feedback from people saying that it lacked any kind of empathy. So even the questions weren't very clear. But what we did, because we knew that the deadline started of September, so we decided to run a huge CAP campaign. You may have seen on LinkedIn people from across venture capital essentially posting pictures. You think people like Nicholas from Skype or Tavi from Wise, encouraging people to take part in this consultation. We've had thousands, actually hundreds of people who've submitted it, so it was a successful campaign. We've closed it yesterday. And the next step is for European Commission to read this, and because we've had a chance to say what it should be structured as. And essentially now it's the time for Commission to show whether they want to hear us and whether they want to actually build something that is for the ecosystem, for startups and what they want. I think this quarter will be essentially the most important part of to decide whether they are going to introduce a solution we need, or it's just going to be a patchwork of 27 different EOings, so directive rather than regulation.
Yeah, so I think that's the if we will have a directive, because as part of your initiative, the European Parliament sort of issued a draft resolution where they suggested a directive. That's a huge problem, because as you were saying, we're not going to have that harmonization that signals trust, including towards the investors outside of the EU and then also within the EU. So it's not going to make fundraising easier. It's going to still be a problem. We're still going to have a fragmented legal framework. How are things looking in Brussels, though? Do you have hope for a regulation? And other than that, I guess I could also go to the next question that I had. What other, okay, we have this proposal with the directive, that could be a hurdle. What other hurdles are you anticipating, legal, practical, and?
Yes, I think a lot of people think that it's Brussels who makes the decision. It's not Brussels. You need to have champions of that, so locally at member states. So please do talk to, if you know ministers, if you know anyone in the ecosystem. I think at the moment it's going to be Ministry of Justices that will be available for running this. But essentially, this is you need champions for this, and we need at least 3 member states. Just recently, Merz and Macron have endorsed pan-European solution. As part of our proposal, we don't touch taxations and labor laws. This is very important. It's a sensitive topic. It's a sovereignty over which member states do not want to give up. And so we need to, we've very carefully drafted the proposal so we don't infringe on those. And yes, there have been a pushback because recently Parliament drafted something that is going to be a directive, which would mean that you would end up with 27 member states EUings sort of solution, which is not the point of it, and it would be directive, which would give everyone or every member state to kind of decide what they want to implement or not. That's the worst kind of solution. We don't need 27 flavors of the same headache again. We need standardization across Europe, and it's important we get this right. So in terms of where things are in Brussels, European Commission is very well aware, and we've been working with them very closely. There are regulations for them on the table. For those of you who might not be aware how legislative process works at the EU level, Commission is the one that proposes legislative proposal, and then you have Parliament and Council who are really voting on it. We're going for the most ambitious solution, which is EU level registry, and that requires unanimity. And so Parliament is already drafting their own proposal in response to European Commission being it needs to be a directive, otherwise it's not going to pass. So bear in mind, like, the mindset stays pretty much the same, let's be careful, but that's not what we need. So we're pushing back really hard. We've actually run a campaign in July pushing back on directive. We're going to run the campaign again. But I think European Commission knows that what we need, and so regulation is very much on the table. It's being discussed. We need champions. We have Macron and Merz who have endorsed the idea of pan-European entity without touching, again, labor or taxation. And that's pretty much what our proposal is. So I would say I have high hopes for this. It's definitely happening. We will know in the next 5 to 6 months if they're going to do the right thing. So let's keep this momentum alive and engage locally, speak about all these problems. It's really important that people understand what the startup ecosystem wants and need for them to succeed.
Yeah, I think the unanimity requirement, it's hard, and we need, as you said, we need to build consensus and continue with the momentum. And it's unheard of if it's gonna happen like in due time and by the time we need it. We have some bad examples, and I think that can be like a learning lesson, and then with the European society, right, that took, I don't know, plus 30 years to negotiate that. But if someone can make it, I think you guys can make it, really. I'm so amazed and surprised by all the advancements and achievements that you've made so far. I think that, as you said, it's a very ambitious initiative, very much needed. If we were to, like, pick and choose some of the most urgent matters that are really like the most painful points right now for the startup and VC ecosystem in the European Union, which would be those from all the proposals that you made, or how would you prioritize it?
Yeah, we've prioritized the structure issue, which is like scale and ability to raise money quickly on the same kind of standard terms. And I think we kind of kept it like what is high demand and high impact. You have to start something. We can't fix everything. And the priority is that, like, let's be a company, a European company from day one that you can invest from. And that's what we're pushing for. You have to distinguish what 28 regime is versus what e-wing is. We're a solution for 28 regime. We made many compromises. Startups often pivot, change, they need to rehire new people. So a lot of people, even Ursula, have said that we need to harmonize employment, make restructuring easier, but we all know that these are sensitive topics. So I've already mentioned that. And the pain points are just making sure that, like, we get the champions of this project. Like I said, it's not Brussels who make the decision. It is actually the local ministers. You need champions who will champion for you for this project. And it's enough you have 3 champions. That's what I was just recently told by a policy advisor. Please bear in mind that I have actually never worked in policy before. This is the first time thing that I'm doing, and I'm learning as I go. And I think that the most interesting part about this initiative is that we are a random people of 5 on a WhatsApp group who are running this. We have one policy advisor who actually knows what he's talking about when it comes to that. But I think that's what makes a difference. We have this mindset of, like, yes, we're naive, but we have full-time jobs and we need to make things happen very quickly. So we execute constantly. Like, we have to sometimes set aside our ego, being like, let's talk to this person, and maybe they will say no, but that's okay, And we have been pretty successful at reaching various stages. We've actually handed over a proposal to the commissioners of DG Just, Michael McGrath. We've met them. So they're really giving, like, this is unprecedented, by the way. Startup associations have been operating for so long and haven't been able to come so close to working with the company or DG Just team. So I think we're being taken seriously. So yeah, we just need you to voice that we need that for Europe, for braver Europe.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really needed. We just had a panel earlier, a discussion actually, and the consensus is still that you need, so the answer is you still need to incorporate in Delaware, obviously, because of the reasons of why you are trying right now to push forward the EU Inc.
Yeah, I think on the Delaware part, I don't think it's like Europe versus the US. We're great at certain things in Europe. I think if we can make Europe the best place to start a company, so it's easier for you to incorporate, to raise, and to scale, and to leave companies and for them to stay to actually in Europe, the longer they can, they have an amazing impact on Europe and the ecosystem. So I think we can compete. It's not one versus the other. There are amazing companies that are run from Europe with Delaware Incs, and that's amazing. And that's what they need to do. That's fine. But I think with EU Inc, that we will see more companies staying in Europe for sure.
Well, thank you so much. We ran out of time. I hope we will meet here next year.